I had always considered my atelier my sanctuary. The scent of fine fabrics, the hum of the sewing machines, the scattered sketches and color swatches. These were my elements, my pulse, my rhythm. Today, though, the atmosphere was different. My pulse raced before I even opened the door. A faint premonition I tried to shrug off. Pushing the door open, I froze.
Luc. And her.
Draped over the very collection I had spent months designing, my latest couture pieces spread beneath them like a canvas of betrayal. The sight made my stomach drop, an icy knot forming in my chest. Luc's eyes flicked toward me, amusement and arrogance mixed in a way that made my blood run cold. "Ah," he said, his voice smooth, cruel. "There she is, the genius herself." I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Luc, what?" He cut me off, a sneer curling on his lips. "What's the matter, Genevieve?"
Shock.
Disbelief? Or are you just finally realizing how dull your designs and, frankly, your personality really are? The woman, his so-called muse, smiled at me, laying a hand casually across a silk gown. "I've always said I bring inspiration where he lacks it," she said, her tone mocking. I felt the world tilt beneath me. The atelier, my sanctuary, had become a stage for my humiliation. My knees buckled, but I held on to the nearest table, desperately gripping the edge. "Luc, stop," I whispered, voice trembling. "Oh, don't act so fragile," he said, standing and approaching with that slow, deliberate arrogance that always made me want to vanish. "Fragile is what you are, Genevieve. Fragile and boring. And this," he gestured to the gowns, the sketches, my blood, sweat, and tears. "This proves it." The words cut through me, each one a jagged knife. The room spun, the fabrics blurred, the light overhead stinging my eyes. My voice failed. And then everything went black. I woke hours later, sprawled on the floor. The room was quiet now, the sharp voices replaced by an aching silence. My body ached, my mind reeled, and I felt a strange, hollow emptiness. But beneath that, a tiny spark flickered, a whisper that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something else. It wasn't despair I felt, not exactly. It was clarity, fierce and raw. The humiliation, the betrayal, the collapse. These had stripped away the old me. The Genevieve who had bent to Luc's whims, the one who had tried to please and smooth over arrogance, had ended here, in the quiet aftermath of ruin. Somewhere in the silence, a new voice emerged in my head. "You are more than his cruelty. You are more than his desire to belittle you. You are fire. You are steel. You are Genevieve." I touched the fabric of one of my gowns, running my fingers over the intricate embroidery, the delicate silk. I realized I wasn't just a designer. I was a force. And if Luc thought he could humiliate me and leave me broken, he was sorely mistaken. And I knew, in that moment, that someone who had always admired me quietly, perhaps even loved me quietly, would see me now in my truth. And that realization made my chest tighten, not with fear, but with possibility. I had been humiliated. I had collapsed. But Genevieve IV would rise, refined, sharp, and brilliant. And the world, Luc included, would never underestimate me again. The next morning, I woke with a new weight in my chest, a clarity I hadn't known I possessed before. The memory of Luc's sneer and the mistress draped across my creations still lingered, but it no longer made me tremble. Instead, it ignited something fierce, sharp, and unyielding. I sat on the edge of my chaise, fingers brushing over my sketches. "This isn't the end," I whispered to myself. "This is the beginning." A knock on the door made me jump, but not with fear. A familiar voice, soft and steady, drifted through. "Genevieve, are you all right?" I looked up to see Bastien Dubois, my oldest friend, standing there with that calm intensity that had always unnerved me in the best way. His dark eyes, full of quiet admiration, met mine, and for a moment, the chaos of yesterday melted into a strange sense of safety. I'm fine," I said, though my voice betrayed the faint tremor still left from the collapse. He stepped inside carefully, as if he were entering a fragile world. "You don't have to pretend with me," he said gently. I saw what happened. Luke. He crossed a line that no one should survive unscathed. "You don't have to handle this alone." I swallowed, my throat tight. "Bastien." He raised a hand, stopping me mid-sentence. "Don't speak. Just let me be here. That's all I want. You're the only masterpiece I've ever cared about." The words hit me harder than Luke's insult ever could. The idea that someone had seen me, truly seen me, for who I was beneath the fabrics, beneath the sketches, beneath the name Genevieve for, was a revelation. My chest tightened, not with panic, but with something warmer, recognition, trust, and perhaps hope. I don't know what to say," I whispered, brushing a loose strand of hair from my face. "You don't have to say anything," he said, stepping closer, his presence filling the room like sunlight. "Just know that whatever you decide to do, I'll be here. Always. And if you need someone to help you rise again, truly rise, then I'm ready." I let the silence hang for a moment, the weight of his words settling over me like a protective shield. My fingers traced the edge of a dress on the mannequin, feeling the textures, the seams, the elegance that was entirely mine. "I've been fragile," I admitted softly. "I let him see me as weak. I let him laugh at me. But I won't anymore." He smiled faintly, leaning slightly closer without touching. "Good. Because you're stronger than you think. And I've always known it. You're not just a designer, Genevieve. You're a force. And now you're ready to claim it." I drew in a steadying breath. "Yes," I said, voice firm. "I'm ready. Ready to rise. Ready to be seen. And ready to make sure he regrets ever underestimating me." Bastien's gaze softened, and I felt a heat behind my chest, a recognition of connection, of shared purpose, and perhaps something deeper. "Then let's start," he said. "Together." And in that quiet atelier, surrounded by my creations, I realized I wasn't just reborn. I was becoming a woman of silk and steel. Elegant, strong, unstoppable. And with Bastien by my side, I finally understood that strength could also be tender and that brilliance could be shared. The morning air in the atelier was crisp, carrying the faint scent of fresh fabrics and ink from my sketches. I moved through my designs with deliberate calm, each gesture precise, each fold and drape reflecting a woman who had reclaimed her control. My heart was steady now, not racing with fear or anxiety, but with purpose. Then the door swung open. Luc Martel. His presence filled the room like a shadow, arrogant, assured, and entirely unaware of the transformation that had taken place while he was busy preening in society's spotlight. He stepped inside, eyes scanning the atelier, lips curling into that smug grin I had once loved and now loathed. "Genevieve," he said, voice dripping charm and mockery. "I thought I'd check on my little designer. Make sure she's still standing after yesterday." I turned slowly to face him, letting the calm in my chest solidify into something sharp, unyielding. "I am standing," I said, voice steady, eyes locked onto his. "Stronger than ever. And not because of you, Luke. In fact, entirely despite you." He chuckled, a low, self-satisfied sound. "Oh, you always were dramatic. Do you really think a little scandal will change anything? You're mine, whether you admit it or not." I laughed then, a sound clear and cutting, echoing in the atelier. "Mine," I repeated. "Luke, you never owned me. You barely understood me. And now, I am no longer the woman who bends to your whims." He frowned, a flicker of irritation passing over his face. "You're exaggerating," he said, stepping closer. "You'll come crawling back. You always do." I took a deliberate step toward him, holding his gaze without flinching.
"No, Luke."
"That woman is gone. She collapsed under your cruelty, yes, but she's reborn now. Stronger, sharper, untouchable." He paused, as if trying to measure the change, the power that radiated from me like heat from steel. "Untouchable," he scoffed, though uncertainty flickered in his eyes. "Yes," I said, walking past him, letting my fingers brush over the mannequins, my sketches, the very creations he had once disrespected. Untouchable because I no longer give you the power. Untouchable because I have allies, friends, and vision. And untouchable because I see you for what you truly are, a man obsessed with control, influence, and ego, and nothing else. Luc's jaw tightened, and for the first time, I noticed how small he seemed in the atelier, how flimsy the arrogance looked against the steel I had become. Genevieve, you, I interrupted, voice cold, precise, are irrelevant.
To me.
To my life. To my designs. And soon, to the world that matters. He stared at me, speechless, and I felt an unfamiliar thrill, satisfaction, not in vengeance, but in the knowledge that he could no longer define me. I turned back to my workbench, deliberately ignoring the lingering tension in the air. From the corner of the room, Bastien's presence was steady, reassuring, like a silent promise. He met my gaze, just a hint of a smile on his lips. I knew then that I was no longer alone in this transformation. My rise, my power, my revenge, and perhaps even love would be shared with someone who saw me, truly saw me. Luc finally left, muttering, unsure, frustrated, and defeated in a way he couldn't comprehend. And I, Genevieve IV, stood tall in the atelier, heart fierce, mind sharp, ready for everything that was to come. The atelier smelled of fresh fabric and ink, but now it carried a different energy, a deliberate, almost electric tension that vibrated through the air. Every thread, every sketch, every pattern was no longer just creation. It was strategy. Every gown I designed, every seam I stitched, was a quiet rebellion, a calculated reclamation of what Luc had tried to taint. Bastien stood nearby, silent at first, watching me move with that grace I had always admired but never truly recognized until now. "You've changed," he said softly, voice filled with awe. I paused, holding a silk drape in my hands. "I had to," I said. "Yesterday broke me and rebuilt me. This isn't just about revenge, Bastien. It's about reclaiming myself, my work, my life, my dignity." He nodded, stepping closer, his presence steady and grounding. "I've always believed in you," he said, "even when you didn't see it yourself. But now you're unstoppable." I allowed a small, wry smile to cross my lips. Unstoppable, yes. But methodical. This isn't a tantrum, it's a plan. Luc thinks he humiliated me. He thinks I'll crumble. He has no idea I've been sharpening myself like a blade, and soon he'll feel the first cut. Bastien's gaze darkened with intrigue. "And what's the first move?" I traced the edge of a sketch of a gown I had worked on late last night, every line, every fold intentionally mocking the vanity and pretension I knew Luc cherished. "We start publicly. Not with words, not with confrontation. We strike at his empire subtly, where it hurts most, his social influence, his image, the way he manipulates perception." He raised an eyebrow. "Subtle. I like that." I walked over to the mannequin, adjusting a delicate corset with precision. Subtle, but unforgettable. My new line will speak for itself. Couture that mocks his arrogance, his obsession with appearances, and the very arrogance that made him believe he could dismiss me. Every stitch, every fabric choice, every design element, its revenge in silk and steel. Bastien smiled, a mix of admiration and something softer, something I hadn't allowed myself to feel until now. "And you want me in on this, how?" "By reminding me that I'm not alone," I said, turning to face him fully. "By reminding me that brilliance doesn't need validation from monsters like Luc. By being the constant I can lean on when the plan demands patience and precision." He stepped closer, voice quiet but charged with meaning. "You won't have to lean alone. Ever again." I allowed myself a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding, feeling his proximity, his unwavering support. The stress, the betrayal, the humiliation, they were all fuel now. Fire coursing through my veins, sharpening my focus, my instincts, my creativity. Luc would not see me coming. He would not recognize the woman I had become. And when he realized the power, the brilliance, the art that he had tried to belittle, it would be too late. "Ready?" Bastien asked, his voice breaking through my reverie. I smiled, sharp and confident. "Always. Let's begin." And with that, the atelier hummed with new life, not just fabric and thread, but strategy, strength, and the unstoppable rise of a woman reborn. The night of the showcase arrived, and my atelier had been transformed. Spotlights glimmered over mannequins draped in my newest creations, the fabrics catching the light like whispers of defiance. Each gown, each ensemble, was more than fashion, it was a statement. Every thread told a story Luc Martel would never see coming. Bastien stood beside me, quiet but solid, his hand brushing lightly against mine. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice low, intimate. I nodded, my chest tightening with excitement and a pinch of nerves. "I've been ready for this my entire life," I said, letting my fingers graze the silk of a gown I had painstakingly designed. "Tonight isn't just fashion, it's my voice." The crowd gathered, a mix of clients, socialites, and press, their chatter filling the air. And in the back I spotted him, Luc. Arrogant, smirking, still convinced he held any power over me. I took a deep breath, the familiar scent of fabric and ink grounding me. "Watch carefully, Bastien," I whispered. "This is how we redefine perception." The first model stepped onto the runway, a cascade of steel gray silk flowing like water, sharp edges softened with delicate embroidery. The audience murmured in awe. Every eye was on the gown and, for the first time, on me. Luc leaned forward, curiosity flickering in his eyes. "What is this?" he muttered under his breath. I smiled faintly, allowing the calm I had cultivated over weeks to show. "This," I said to Bastien quietly, "is the beginning of his unraveling." The second model appeared, draped in a gown that echoed the perfume bottles Luc had proudly showcased in his boutiques, but twisted into an elegant mockery of his vanity. The crowd gasped, a mixture of admiration and amusement. I heard whispers, "Ingenious, so daring. Her creativity has never been sharper." I allowed myself a small smile, feeling the thrill of recognition. Luc's eyes narrowed as he realized the subtle message. Every design, every pattern, every fabric choice was a reflection of his arrogance, and my rise beyond it. After the final model, I stepped onto the platform myself, the room silencing in anticipation. I took the microphone, voice calm, precise, carrying the steel I had forged within me. "Tonight, I present not just a collection but a statement. Art, fashion, and integrity are inseparable. And those who underestimate brilliance," I said, letting my gaze sweep the room, landing briefly on Luc, "will be left behind." Bastien's hand found mine again, squeezing gently. "You've done it," he whispered. "Yes," I murmured. "And this is only the beginning." Luc's jaw tightened, his arrogance faltering under the weight of public admiration and critique. The crowd was with me, their eyes alight with respect and wonder. His influence crumbled quietly in the face of my clarity, my precision, and the artistry he had always mocked. After the showcase, as the guests applauded and praised, I caught Bastien's gaze. He smiled, the warmth in his eyes a mirror of my own triumph. "You've taken everything back," he said softly. "I've taken more than that," I replied, voice steady. "I've taken myself." And in that moment, with the flash of cameras, the applause, and Bastien at my side, I realized that my rebirth was complete. Luc Martel was irrelevant, and I, Genevieve IV, was unstoppable. The morning after the showcase, the city buzzed with whispers and headlines. My collection had not only dazzled but delivered a subtle, undeniable message to Luc Martel. I was no longer the woman he could belittle, humiliate, or control. Bastien and I sat in the quiet of my atelier, reviewing press coverage and social media reactions. The excitement was intoxicating, not because of vanity, but because of the sheer satisfaction of seeing truth acknowledged. "They're saying it's revolutionary," Bastien said, leaning back in his chair, eyes bright. "Not just the designs, the way you turn betrayal into art. People are noticing everything he's done, too. I sipped my coffee, feeling the warmth spread through me, grounding me. Yes, I said softly. And that's just the beginning. His empire, his carefully constructed world of influence, it's about to unravel. Bastien's gaze softened as he studied me. And you'll be there for every step, he said. Not just as support, but as the force behind it. I smiled faintly, allowing a spark of amusement.
Exactly.
It's time he learned that arrogance has consequences, that cruelty and deceit leave cracks, and those cracks can be exposed. Later that day, the first public blow landed. A high-profile fashion magazine, one I had quietly cultivated contacts with over months, released an exposé. Luc's lavish perfume launches, once celebrated, were revealed to be entangled in financial mismanagement and scandal. The article hinted at favoritism, manipulation, and, most importantly, his obsession with control, painting a man desperate to maintain an image while ignoring reality. When the news reached him, I heard from one of his associates that Luc had turned red, rage and disbelief dancing across his features. He won't know what hit him, I whispered to Bastien. He already does, he said softly. He's realizing that the world he's controlled isn't yours to destroy anymore. And that's a power he's never understood until now. As the days passed, the social pariah effect became undeniable. Invitations dwindled, partners hesitated, and whispers of scandal followed him wherever he went. Meanwhile, my collection's popularity surged, and my name was spoken with respect, admiration, and awe. One evening, as Bastien and I reviewed the week's reactions, he reached over, brushing a stray lock of hair from my face. "You've done it," he said gently, voice low and reverent. "Not just the revenge, you've reclaimed yourself." I allowed myself a long, steady breath. "I've taken everything back," I said. "My dignity, my life, my peace. And I've gained more than I ever imagined. Someone who sees me for exactly who I am, who appreciates every part of me." He smiled, fingers lingering on my cheek. "And you've earned it, Genevieve. Every bit of it." I looked around my atelier, at the space that had once been the scene of humiliation and collapse. It now hummed with triumph, creativity, and strength. Luc Martel, arrogant and careless, had fallen. And I had risen, not just to crush him, but to shine brighter than ever. I leaned into Bastien, resting my head on his shoulder, savoring the warmth and steadiness of his presence. "This is what it feels like to be untouchable," I murmured. He laughed softly, brushing his lips along my hairline.
"No," he said.
"This is what it feels like to be loved, truly seen, and unstoppable together." And in that moment, I knew my rise was complete, my revenge exacted, and my heart finally home. The atelier was quiet, the soft glow of the evening sun pouring through the tall windows and casting warm light over my creations. The tension of the past weeks, the betrayal, the collapse, the revenge, had melted into something softer, richer. For the first time, I could breathe without the weight of anger pressing against my chest. Bastien stood nearby, sketchbook in hand, but his eyes weren't on the paper. They were on me, observing, always attentive, as if he were cataloging every detail of me that he cherished. It made me feel vulnerable and safe at the same time, a combination I hadn't realized I craved until now. "You've changed," he said softly, voice low and almost reverent. "More than I imagined. Stronger, more brilliant, more alive." I smiled faintly, walking toward him. "I've had a good teacher," I teased, but my eyes softened. "Someone who always saw me, even when I didn't see myself." He closed the distance between us, gently taking my hands in his. "I've always seen you," he said, thumb brushing along the back of my hand. "Every part, every flaw, every brilliance, and I've loved it all." My chest tightened at his words, a warmth spreading through me that had nothing to do with the heaters or the sunlight. "Bastien, I didn't know how much I needed this," I whispered. "To be seen, truly seen." He stepped closer, letting his hands rest lightly on my shoulders. "And you always will be," he said. With me, you're never alone. I felt his fingers trail down my arms, brushing against my skin in a gentle, deliberate touch that made the hairs on my arms rise. The intimacy of it, the quiet tenderness, made my heart beat faster, not with fear, but with recognition. Recognition that love could be patient, nurturing, and intense all at once. I want to be close to you, I admitted softly, stepping into his warmth. Closer than I've ever been to anyone. He smiled, a slow, knowing curve of his lips, and leaned in, forehead resting against mine. Then be, he whispered. I'll be here. Every moment. Every breath. Our eyes met, and I saw the depth of his devotion, the quiet passion, the unwavering presence. I leaned my head against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath me, letting myself melt into the warmth and security he offered. He wrapped his arms around me fully, pulling me into him, and I rested against him, my hands lightly tracing the line of his back. The world outside, the betrayal, the scandal, Luc, vanished. It was just him and me, the quiet intimacy of being completely known and completely accepted. Do you feel it? He murmured, lips brushing my hair. This thus. I nodded, eyes closed, heart full. I feel it, I whispered. Every part, every moment, and I never want to let it go. He pressed a soft kiss to my temple, and I shivered, a delicate thrill running through me. Then you won't, he said. I promise. You're my masterpiece, Genevieve, and I'll spend every day proving it. I smiled against his chest, closing my eyes, letting the warmth, the touch, and the quiet devotion wrap around me like a cloak. In his arms, I had found more than love. I had found safety, respect, admiration, and a tenderness that rivaled even the sharpest edge of my brilliance. For the first time, I was complete, reborn, unstoppable, and deeply, irreversibly loved. The atelier was quiet that evening, bathed in the warm glow of the lamps we had carefully arranged. My new collection sparkled under the lights, but I barely noticed. My focus was entirely on Bastien, who leaned casually against a work table, sketchbook in hand, but eyes locked on me with that steady, unwavering gaze that had always disarmed me. You know, he said, smirking slightly, watching you rise like this, it's intoxicating. I laughed softly, crossing the floor to stand in front of him. Intoxicating? Bastien, I'm supposed to be the one taking control here. You're supposed to be the quiet observer, not my critic. He tilted his head, dark eyes gleaming. Oh, I'm observing. And learning. And falling harder every day. I felt heat rise to my cheeks, and I brushed a hand along his shoulder, teasingly. Falling for me, after all this chaos? Are you sure your heart can survive? He laughed, low and rich, and took my hand. My heart's been surviving for years, Genevieve. It's just been waiting for you to catch up. I pressed closer, our hands entwined, and let myself study him, the strong line of his jaw, the warmth in his eyes, the gentle strength in his posture. I think I've always been waiting for you, too, I admitted softly. He stepped even closer, lowering his voice. Then stop waiting. Stop hiding. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. The tension between us shifted, softening into a warmth that spread through my chest. I leaned into him, letting my head brush his shoulder. It's strange, I whispered. After everything, I finally feel at peace. He tilted his chin down, letting his lips brush my forehead. Peace and passion. Strength and tenderness. You can have it all, Genevieve. I want you to have it all with me. I looked up at him, eyes meeting his, and felt the solidity of his words, the unshakable devotion behind them. Bastien, I want that, too. More than I ever thought I could want anything. He smiled, a gentle, knowing curve, and wrapped his arms around me fully. Then let's stop talking about it, he murmured. Let's just be. I rested my head against his chest, feeling his heartbeat, steady and warm, anchoring me in this new reality. I could stay here forever, I whispered. You will, he said, brushing my hair behind my ear, As long as you want. I'll never let go. Not now, not ever. I tilted my face up to his, letting our lips meet in a soft, lingering kiss. It wasn't hurried or reckless. It was full of patience, understanding, and mutual devotion. My fingers traced the line of his neck, and he pressed closer, hands warm against my back. I love you, Bastien, I said against his lips, voice trembling with sincerity. All of you, all of this. And I love you, he replied, voice low and steady. Your brilliance, your fire, your heart. You're my masterpiece, Genevieve, and I'll spend every day proving it. I smiled, closing my eyes, letting the intimacy, the safety, and the warmth wash over me. No fear, no betrayal, no arrogance could touch me here. Only love, only trust, only Bastien. In that quiet atelier, surrounded by silk, sketches, and the remnants of a past I'd conquered, I finally understood what it meant to be fully seen, cherished, and loved. And in his arms I was home. Forever.